Welcome back to Modern Psychology Hacks. This is episode 10. This is system design. Let's get into the quote for the day. We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. That was from the book Atomic Habits, which is going to be backing most of this episode. So let's get into it. Another quote we have from James Clear. He says, when scientists analyze people who appear to have tremendous self-control, it turns out those individuals aren't all that different from those who are struggling. Instead, disciplined people are better at structuring their lives in a way that does not require heroic willpower and self-control. Right, so we're going to look at the three things that he describes as the timeline of success. So the first base level of the pyramid is identity. You need to build your identity first. And the second part is processes. Processes is what takes your identity from where it is to the third level, which is outcomes. So number one, identity, two, process, three, outcomes. But as we know, most people try to start with outcomes first. So they will think that they want their outcome to be a specific thing. They'll set their goals and they'll just hope that everything else falls into place. So this doesn't necessarily happen because, as we know, unless you set a plan for the specifics of how you're going to achieve something, you're likely not going to get very far if you just have vague aspirations. So we obviously want to become the kind of person who does the habit that we want. And we want to focus on the kind of person that we will be over our results that we are trying to achieve. For example, if you want to learn to play the piano, say that instead you want to become a musician. This will reset your mind frame into a sort of abundance mindset that you can do anything you set yourself to do. Do you remember when I asked you, wouldn't it be nice if you could clone yourself, send them out into the world, and make them do all the hard things that you don't want to do yourself? What if I told you that that's the essence of what habits are? When you do habits, your subconscious takes over. We're essentially weaponizing our subconscious to go out and use our time and energy for us so that we don't have to suffer through the decision phase. We just do it automatically and we blink and it's over. It's like when we say that humans are running on automated programs, most of these programs for most people are subconscious ones, but you can actually determine which programs you want to install. How do you do that? Well, we're going to go back to the habit feedback loop. So we talked about the habit feedback loop in chapter, I think 6 or the one after 6, because it was talking about environment design for negative habits. This video, we're going to be talking about environment design for positive habits. So for this one, we're going to look at the habit feedback loop, and it's a 4-process system. So the first part of the habit feedback loop is a cue. Now, a cue is anything that your environment throws at you that reminds you or starts off a certain habit. The next one is craving. This is your body's natural response to the cue. The third one is response. This is the action that you take after you feel the cue and the craving. And the reward is fourth. We wouldn't do something if we didn't have a reward of some kind associated with that. So let's go into an example. Let's say your phone buzzes. You want to know who texted you, and you pick it up, and then you've solved the mystery. So the cue is your phone buzzes. The craving, you want to know who texted you. The response, you pick up your phone, and the reward is you know who texted you. That's a very simple one right there. So there are also 4 laws to habit and system design. And these 4 laws relate to the 4 habit feedback loop processes. So number 1, make it obvious. Number 2, make it attractive. Number 3, make it easy. And number 4, make it rewarding. We're going to get into those one by one, but first off, we're going to start from a quote by Carl Jung. He says that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. All right, law number 1, make it obvious. I have another quote. The process of behavior change always starts with awareness. You need to be aware of your habits before you can change them. This is why I recommended in a different video, and also I would recommend in this video, to write down your habits. As many of them as you can think of, especially the common ones that you do every day. As you go through your day, you'll think of the habits that you do, the big ones and the small ones, and you'll start to become more aware of them. Just writing them down and thinking about this is helpful, but you can also use this as sort of a list. You can put a plus, minus, or equal sign next to them. And then we're going to work on changing our negative habits and reinforcing our positive habits. I'll tell you another way that you can use this list later. So for the first law, make it obvious, we're trying to be aware of our habits, and especially the cues. Now the cues are the little points of your environment that send you on to do good or bad habits, right? So our quote for that one is, every habit is initiated by a cue, from Atomic Habits. And what you want to do is you want to assign a habit to a specific cue, especially the habits that you want to start doing. So a cue is most commonly a time or location. So let's do this as an example. We're going to use what is called an implementation intention. Implementation intention consists of 3 things: an action, a time, and a location. This is the strongest way that you can start to build a habit. For law number 1, make it obvious. Let's figure out one right now. Let's say you want to start running. So you say, every day I will action. So every day I will walk to my front door at a certain time, at 6:30 a.m. And what's the third one? The location. So you will walk, the location is the front door, and the time is 6:30 a.m. Do something like that. Or it could be every morning, I will action, so read for the time, 10 minutes at 6 a.m. in the location, which is your spare room. Something like that. And we're going to assign these to the cues so that your brain becomes familiar with it and your environment is designed in advance so that when you see that area, you will know what habit you're supposed to do for that thing. So another thing that we're going to get into is habit stacking. So you can tie a desired habit to an existing habit. One way that I did this was I would specifically have this one class that would always end at 5:30, and I wanted to go to the gym afterwards. And what I would do is a lot of time go home and lay around. And what I wanted to do to stop doing this is that I brought my clothes in a gym bag and everything that I needed. I would go to class, and then after that class was over, I would start my next habit right off of the bat. And instead of that habit being something that exists on its own, going to the gym on its own whenever I have time, it became something I would start doing subconsciously as soon as that class was over. So I was finishing up that class and I was mentally prepared to get up and walk across campus and go do that. So it's very important that you make a specific action at the end of task A, the trigger for task B. The author uses the example that he tried of wanting to do more push-ups. So he wanted to do more push-ups throughout the day so that he could stay active. This is like standing at your desk, I guess, on extreme mode. So he would do 10 push-ups before lunch. But the problem with that was it wasn't specific enough. Was this before he sat down, after he sat down? Would he warm up his food? Would he, whatever. So he specifically tied action B to the end of action A. So he would finish what he was working on and close his laptop. That would be the trigger. And then that would trigger the next habit. So the closing of the laptop becomes the cue, which is also acting as part A or step 1 of the 4-step process for the habit feedback loop. So his laptop would close, he would get down and do 10 push-ups, he would feel good about it, and then he would go through those 4 steps, and then he would continue on. It becomes much easier for us to do things when there's no option, and when we know what the situation is, we know how long it's going to be, and we do it multiple times, like the same time, back to back to back. So he also says that environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. So if you want to start drinking more water, put more water bottles around your house. Now, I'm not advocating to start using a whole bunch of plastic, but I am saying that I did, and I recycled them. So I actually read this book 2 years ago, and I was like, wow, well, I do actually want to start drinking more water. So instead of using one of these water bottles, which is what I use now, spoiler alert, I drink way less water than when I was doing this. But I was using one of those water bottles, and then I bought a 40-pack of water bottles, and I would keep them under my bed, and I would put them around my room. And the thing is every time I would see a water bottle, I would pick it up and just chug as much as I could of it. And I would feel good because it would be like, I don't even know, like almost primal. I would just grab it every single time. I didn't even think about it. And I would drink so much water. It was probably 8 water bottles a day, if I'm being honest, especially if I was home studying for a long time. It would just be something that I would associate with that. Every time I would see a full water bottle, I would think, no, that should be empty. So I would try to empty it. Now I cannot see the level of water in my water bottle, so I don't think, oh, I'm going to drink that. I just think about the exterior of my water bottle, I guess. So that's one way that you can do that. The more you see something, the more likely you are going to be to do that thing. So we already talked about the whole like putting junk food in non-transparent containers. So essentially, you can also use your environment as a cue. And we talked about that a little bit, but essentially I'm going to go into a different YouTube video that I saw that said that there are 4 major zones that are a minimum for every human being to have a healthy life. So this was actually a video I watched during quarantine that was talking about how to be in a small space on your own and not go insane. And essentially to maintain productivity, humans need 4 spaces. The first one is a rest space. That's not sleep. That's like if you're going to be on your phone or if you're going to be doing something like a hobby, then that's where you want to do that. Say it's a couch. Next, you need a sleeping space, which is different. When you are in this area, the only thing you should be doing is sleeping. That's definitely going to be your bed. Number 3 is a place to eat. You should not be eating at the place that you rest or sleep, right? Because then your body is going to subconsciously think those thoughts. So that should be your kitchen table, or I don't even care, like could be your floor, I guess. And then the 4th one is work. So if you want to work, then you can increase your focus by doing only work in your only work spot. If you want to take a break, you go to a different spot. You don't take a break at your desk because then your brain is going to associate that as an option. It's going to be like, well, I took a break at my desk last time, so now that I'm at my desk, it's break time, right? No, it's work time when you're at your desk. So the mantra for this one is 1 space, 1 use. So I would recommend, if you are taking notes, to write something down like that. 4 pieces of furniture that you have, or 4 areas, if you are lucky enough to have multiple rooms in your house or something like that, that you can use to structure your environment for success. And you can also do the reverse of this, which is not the law of make it obvious, it's make it invisible. So we're hiding things that we don't want to see to cut out temptation at its source. Law number 2 is make it attractive. So some way to make it attractive, and I think one of the best ways, is using your social situation. So if you are in a certain social situation where a certain habit is the norm, like when I'm in architecture school, the habit that is desired and the habit that makes you feel good is being good at architecture. And everyone in that zone feels, like if they do well on an architecture project, they genuinely feel more accepted by the society a little bit. But that's one way to look at it. And you can also find social situations and circles that like the habits that you like. So say you are wanting to start working out more and you live with people who don't work out, then maybe that is not going to necessarily trigger you as much as it was if you lived with a bunch of people who all worked out. So if you are in a situation where the social group is more accepting and more focused on that kind of thing, then you're more likely that you're going to do it because we subconsciously look for human approval. All right, so you can use, you can make hard habits attractive if you learn to associate them with a reward or a positive feeling. So say that you are telling yourself, I have to work out. Now that's okay, I suppose, but you could also tell yourself, I am going to build a better physique. I get to exert strength. I get to utilize my youth and run and do things that are fun. You could say it like that. You could look at it in the terms of spending money. Instead of looking at saving money as a whole sacrifice, you could look at it as future financial freedom. So I actually used to have this task list of things that I had to do in the day. And one of them was eat a certain amount of calories. One of them was go to the gym. One of them was do my scripture reading, all of these things. And I had them more as tasks. And then I started to reset those. So instead of going to the gym, I had it as physique, of something that I was desiring. And then instead of diet, it was, I don't even remember what that one was. But then instead of reading the Bible, it was spirituality instead. So instead of looking at the task and what exactly it is that might make you feel more negatively about it, you could reassociate the task that you have to do with somewhat more of the positive result. So you can do that, and you can also use that to restructure negative habits, which makes something unattractive rather than attractive. So an example of that would be just highlighting the benefits of stopping doing something over the losses. So say you're offered a cigarette and you're trying to quit smoking cigarettes. This is like the big example, I guess, that I keep going back to. But you're trying to stop smoking cigarettes, I guess, and you are offered one and you say, no, I'm not doing that. I am a runner. I am someone who runs. What happens with that is that you are saying, no, I'm not doing the bad habit, because the benefits of that is that I get to be better at something else, which is putting your brain, instead of like a loss, like I'm losing out on this mentality, it's a gaining mentality. Every day that I don't smoke a cigarette, I am getting better, healthier lungs. So you can do that as well. Just think of it the other direction. So law number 3 is make it easy. And we'll go over the first 2 again. Law number 1 was make it obvious. Law number 2 was make it attractive. Law number 3 was make it easy. So the way that we're going to make it easy is through number 1 way your brain remembers things: repetition. Your brain does not remember habits in terms of time. So you could say, I've been doing this habit for a month. But if you only do that habit once a week, your brain remembers it as 4 times. Here's what you can do to use this as a hack. And I figured this out the last time I tried to start a brand new habit. And it kind of came to me as I was doing the research for this a little bit as well. Do not frame your habit by time, but by reps. So let's say you are planning on doing something hard. You can do that thing, or at least go through the motions of the introduction to that task multiple times, back to back to back. Then when that situation arises again, you go through the tasks that you've already done 3 times, and you are just automatically primed to do this situation again. So friction reduction is the whole premise of this law. We want to reduce the friction as much as possible. That could be through environment design, by priming your environment the night before to set your things out that you need, when you go, you are already going to have everything that you need, and you're going to feel as if it's already been done. This is why you are told online when you look this up to set out your workout clothes and your shoes and everything that you need the night before, so that when you wake up, you don't have to do that step. The bigger the obstacle is, the more friction there is. If you have to look around your messy room to find workout clothes, to get up, to search, and you're already tired and you're already exhausted, like, the chances that you are going to succeed are so much lower than if you go ahead and take care of those steps in advance when you do have the energy. So you should just make it more convenient. Here's what else you can do. And this is recommended also by Atomic Habits. This is the 2-minute rule. So the 2-minute rule is you take your habit that you are trying to do and you cut it down to its most basic components, and you do the first 2 minutes of that habit. Say you're trying to run, you go, grab your shoes, put them on, and you stretch, and that's it. You call it there and you check it off as a success. Why? Because of static friction versus rolling friction. An object in motion stays in motion, and an object at rest stays at rest. It is difficult to push an object that is stationary, but once it is moving, it is easier. So the thing about motivation is that it usually comes in the middle of the task. You are not going to be motivated to go to the gym. But what I do when I don't want to go to the gym is I show up, I go inside, and I get through the front door. That's what my mom told me, that the hardest way to move at the gym is the front door. So we are going to get through the front door. And what is funny is normally after I'm there, I'm like, well, guess I'm going to hit a couple workouts. Guess I'm going to hit a couple more. And then you've got the domino effect taken care of. You're already in a situation where you've already done this before. Repetition has already happened, and you are just subconsciously led through it. You just need to practice the beginning steps. That's all. You could do this with reading 1 chapter of a book a day. Say your goal is to read a chapter of a book a day, but your system could be, I am going to, implementation intention example. Let's say I am going to read 1 page of a book in bed at 9 p.m. So this doesn't mean you are going to do the whole chapter, and it's not like 1 page is a whole lot, but the chance that you are going to continue is high. And all you have to do is tell yourself, yeah, I'm going to read 1 page. That's not that hard. That is extremely easy, relatively speaking. That takes 2 minutes. I don't know what fraction of the day 2 minutes is, but it is a tiny, tiny number. And of course, prime your environment. Let's use another example of priming your environment. Say you want to eat a healthy breakfast, then maybe you would put out a pan and some cooking spray on the kitchen counter before you go to bed, so that when you wake up, it's right there. It's less likely that you're going to get something on the way to work. You can also use making a habit more difficult instead of making a habit more easy. You can use the inverse of this habit to make an activity more difficult by increasing the amount of friction you put at the beginning of this habit. So you can, let's say you're trying to stop watching TV because you're 3 out of 5 days through a dopamine detox and you've already considered it a couple times. So you're going to say, I'm going to make this difficult for me to do. I'm going to put the batteries of the remote in a different room as the remote. I'm going to put the remote in my living room. I'm going to put the batteries in the kitchen. I'm going to put the TV, I'm going to turn the TV around, and I'm going to unplug it. That's going to make it way harder to do that. So maybe you could just unplug your TV and put the remote in a different room every single time that you finish watching the TV. And that's like the final step of your watching the TV habit. That would increase the amount of friction that you have and make it way harder to slip accidentally into that, right? Law number 4 is... Hello? Oh, make it satisfying. So we are going to pause. Okay, law number 4, make it satisfying. So we need to experience pleasure if we are going to attempt to try to do our habits again. The law of making it satisfying is the most important rule when it comes to the likelihood of you repeating the action again next time. The first 3 rules, obvious, easy, and attractive, are to increase the chance you are going to do your habit this time. And the rule of make it rewarding is a long-term solution for making the chance that you are going to do it again the next time higher, if that makes sense. So we are going to look at the ways that we can reward ourselves. So if your task is producing a feeling of negativity and it feels like punishment, you're not going to want to repeat this task. If your brain is experiencing a reward from it, it is more likely that you are going to repeat this task. So one way that we can do that is using visuals. We're going to use our first cue kind of situation to cue us to start paying attention to the visuals of some sort of meter of success that we can use. Let's use the example of, hopefully, if you've been following along through this video series, you've tried to do multiple habits, or we're not going to use the word try, but you've started doing multiple habits that are going to improve your quality of life. One that I mentioned was keeping your room clean for 5 days. One of them I mentioned was dopamine detoxing for 5 days, or quitting out other habits for 5 days type of a situation. So if you want to make a reward system for it, you can go on your door and put 5 empty circles in some large, bold color and make sure it looks nice, because you're going to see it every day. And you want to make sure that it's satisfying to fill in that circle. So when I was doing a habit that I will get into in a second, I did that where I put it on my door, and every time I left, I would see that. And if I missed a habit, which I got it on Monday, but I missed on Tuesday, I saw that for the whole week, that there was an empty circle. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I had the circles filled, you better believe, because I didn't want to see that every single time I left. You can also do this with like marbles in glass jars. You can do this with a calendar that you put an X on it, or some situation. It should be that you are feeling satisfied when you put the marble in the jar. The whole aesthetic of it is very important, and you can get into that if you'd like to. I've never really been one that is good with that area. Maybe it would help, maybe it really would help. But we can also do something called temptation bundling. So we make a habit more attractive / rewarding by adding something that we enjoy doing onto our habit. So this is like working out and listening to music. So you can work out and listen to music at the same time to increase your amount of pleasure that you get from working out. I would caution you, though, do not pair 2 things together that is an extremely low dopamine related thing, like working out, with a high dopamine thing. I assume actually exercise does give you a lot of dopamine in far as long term, but the difference is that let's say you're playing iPhone games while you're working in between sets. That's going to take your brain away from long-term gratification, doing hard things, getting in a mindset, feeling physical, and that's going to put your brain in a mental, digital, disassociated, short-term gratification, dopamine spike situation, so that every time you're doing a set, you're just feeling bad about it, if that makes sense, because you just want to get back to the in-betweens between your sets when you get to be on your phone. That is the worst situation you could have, and it's probably going to result in you leaving the gym early, because you are just going to be able to go home and keep doing those in-between sets on your phone later, playing games on your phone in bed. So I would say use something like music, where something is consistent through the whole thing. I will say, though, that the times that I don't use music, I do have fairly good workouts, genuinely, because I am just focused on that workout and whatever thoughts are going on inside my head. So that's very helpful. You can do that. And I would recommend trying it once or twice. Leave your phone in the car and see how you feel. Notice specifically your mental situation and the amount of energy that you have at the gym. I don't know, music is very motivating, and it really does a lot of effect on the brain. So maybe you'd be better off with some music. But you want to make sure that it's not a short-term gratification task, right? We're trying to eliminate those anyways. So dopamine detoxing is the whole holy grail that we're following after. So it should at least be within the bounds of that. But let's say that you already listen to music all the time and you're thinking, well, what's the big deal? I listen to music all day. It's not much of a change to listen to it at the gym. Well, cut it out. Cut it out the rest of the day. Cut out YouTube and all of these things that are overstimulating you, and only give it to yourself. Let's say like you do it for 5 days, right? But like only give it to yourself when you are going and doing your difficult habit. So we're not trying to make ourselves upset and that we don't have any stimulation all the time. That's not the goal. We're trying to specifically reduce the amount of stimulation we're getting so that we look forward to stimulation more. The way that humans have done for a long time. That like now, like we eat sugar all of the time and we can eat sugar as much as we want, but back then it was only found in things like berries and honey, and there was not a lot of it. So it was more sweet to them because it was more rare. So that's what we're trying to do here with music. So bundle you two things that you want to do together to increase the chance that you're going to look forward to doing the difficult habit. So you can also use that in the way of stacking. So habit stacking, I would recommend you don't use habit stacking as a reward. So you don't want to be like, I'm going to the gym and then afterwards I'm going to do my bad habit, because then you can just do a bad habit and not go to the gym if you wanted to. I would recommend doing something that you enjoy and then tacking on something more difficult at the end. But then again, that gets into the whole dopamine paradox situation. So I'd recommend just isolating things one thing at a time. Andrew Huberman warns actually that stacking too many dopamine releasing behaviors on top of each other reduces motivation long term. So if you are taking like pre-workout and you are listening to music and you're playing iPhone games and you're doing all of this stuff at the gym that you love to do and you love all of these things, it's going to bring you more to mentally care about those things than it is about the actual action of working out. It could be used in a bunch of other situations. I just can't think of anything right now. He says that long term, if you are stacking all of these super, super fun things like these, like say you're like playing Clash Royale in your car for an hour and then you do the gym and then you all of these things, like it's not going to be fun because it's the gym anymore. It's going to be fun for those added things. So what you want to do is just limit the amount of input that you get, and it's going to make the activity itself more fulfilling in and of itself, where you're just going to feel better at it too. And you're going to feel the gratification and the reward from that point intrinsically. So that is the end of the law. Make it rewarding. And I have another quote from James Clear. He says, "When you fall in love with the process rather than the product, you don't have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy. You can be satisfied anytime your system is running. And a system can be successful in many different forms, just not the first one that you envision." Or not just the first one that you envision. So he's saying that you can modify your system, and you should, because you're not going to get it 100% right the first time. And that's very important to know. But you don't need to be getting necessarily like physically closer to your goals every single time. You can make backwards progress, you can do anything, but as long as you are doing the things that you have committed to yourself you're going to do, and your system is running and your habits are being built and repetition is happening consistently back to back to back, your brain is going to start doing that, and then your subconscious is going to take over. That's the clone version of yourself that can do things for you without you even feeling like you have to do it. Discipline is not made by extreme willpower, it's conditioning. You can condition yourself to be awesome. So I'm not going to just say these empty words and not back it up. So when I was developing this series, which took a month, I actually, before this series, I felt like I should try it out to see if I could really use it. And the results were beyond amazing. So I've tried this before and it did work with certain things, but I specifically used certain aspects that we talked about in this chapter to build a habit. So I was asking myself, what habit do I want to pick? And I thought that it would be really cool if I could get really fast. And I had always wanted to be someone that was very fast. I didn't necessarily want to be someone who would run marathons and things, but I wanted to be someone who was fast. And I guess that could apply to long term, like long distance or short term distance. But it was an ambition of mine that I had started having grow this last year. And I felt like that was something that I could build off of myself and my identity. So what I did is I started telling myself, step one is identity design. I started telling myself, I am a runner. I am someone who runs. I am someone who wakes up early and runs. And the reason that I was picking this habit is because it felt hard. I wanted to pick something that was way harder than it needed to be. I didn't want to say I'm going to go run every nighttime, every afternoon. I said I want to wake up at 6 a.m. and run. And we're going to test these habits and see if they work or not. So, what's the first thing I did? I had to set up the whole habit feedback loop for this. So, cue, craving, response, reward. Had to do that. And the way you do that is with the 4 steps. Make it obvious, easy, attractive, and rewarding. So, I thought, how am I going to do this? I've tried to motivate myself to wake up early and do things like this before, and it didn't work. So I was thinking about that, and I still got into identity, and I was doing things with identity, like I am statements, kind of trying to visualize, but I was telling myself I was going to do it the next morning. So I was saying all these things like, I am someone who gets up and runs. I am someone who can do things that not everyone can. I'm doing this specifically because not everyone else can do it. Those are all true, and they definitely motivated me, but it wasn't enough, right? That was the first step. But after that, what I thought of was the quote that James Clear said, that your brain does not measure your success in amount of time, it's the amount of reps. So I knew I had to get up the next morning at 6 a.m. and it was 9 p.m. And I thought, all right, well, how do I do this quickly? So I thought, I'm going to go through my morning routine right now. I'm going to set it up and I'm going to make it attractive, easy, and obvious. And I'm going to go ahead and do it 3 times right now. So what I did is I got all of my workout clothes ready. First, I cleaned my room so there was less going on. So I cleaned my room so that my brain would automatically focus to the new point of the one part of the room that wasn't cleaned, which was a pile of workout clothes on the floor with my shoes, with my jacket, and my headphones on top, and my socks, and my everything that I needed to get going the next morning. I had my keys and my wallet and my phone on the bedside, not the bedside table, but I have a bedside table that's closer to, it's like a bookcase closer to my door. And I had the alarm there too. So what I did is I put the alarm, that's a loud alarm that is a physical digital like alarm. And I would set that with that pile of stuff plugged into the wall over by my door. And then I would go on to the other side of the room where my bed was, turn off the lights and go to sleep. And then I'd go to sleep, but I set my phone alarm to go off in 5 minutes. So I would get nice and comfy in my bed. It was like 9:30 p.m. and my phone alarm would go off. It was 9:31. So I would wake up, pretend I'd wake up, and I would grab my phone off the bedside table, which I'd recommend putting across the room, but I already had one across the room, so I was good there, I suppose. But I grabbed it off the bedside table, turned it off, walked over to the other alarm and turned that off because I didn't want that alarm to go off. Otherwise, it would wake up my roommates. I mean, I'm sure they were awake at 9 p.m., but hypothetically. Then I would go to my clothes pile, I'd put all my clothes on, I would put my keys, my phone, and everything in my pockets, and I would walk to the front door, and then I would turn around, and I'd come back, and I'd do everything in reverse, get in bed, and then I would do that 3 more times. It took me about an hour of getting up and going to bed and getting up and going to bed and setting alarms and turning off my alarms. But when I woke up the next morning, you better believe that my brain was so conditioned to wake up and get up and turn off my alarms and put on my clothes and put my hand on the door that I didn't even realize it until I had already done it. and it worked. So I had just done what my brain understood to be 3 repetitions of this sequence. So when I woke up the next morning, that was number 4. That means that it would have been weirder for me to stay in bed than to get up and do that, because the pathway through my brain weedy jungle was directly cut through into the fact that my pathway out of bed and to the front door was more traveled than my pathway of laying in bed, at least in that situation. I lay in bed all the time, but I had trained myself that in this situation, I'm getting up and I'm doing it. So then that was the easy part. That was essentially the implication of the 2-minute rule, where you get up and you do 2 minutes of it, you stretch and you put on your shoes and everything, and then you go. Once you do the first little step, it becomes so much easier. And don't forget that habits are so much harder in our head than actually just doing the habit. It's like procrastinating cleaning your room, and then when you clean your room, you start to wonder why you didn't do it earlier. It's because thinking about it is so much worse than actually just getting around to doing it. I mean, let's say I had to do this for work. Let's say for work I had to get up at 6 a.m. You better believe no matter how tired I am, I'm getting up for work. That's the same situation. We just need to treat it a little bit differently and more intentionally, because we're not as motivated, because we're not going to get fired if we just sleep through a run. So I would start doing that, and I felt great. And what is ironic is that when I switched locations, so I was in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and then I was at college, and I switched to being home for Christmas break, I was still able to do it because I set up the same situation and the same system for myself. So I put all of my clothes next to the door, and this time I would put my phone by the door. So I would wake up and I would go over there. And the thing that really made me do it is that I told my family the night before, I'm going to get up and run at 6 a.m. in the morning. And they were like, okay, all right. And like, they're thinking of the version of me that sleeps till like 2 p.m., that sleeps in, that has no energy. I mean, I do have a sleep apnea condition I really like recently figured out, which explains a lot, but they're thinking of that version of me. And I woke up at 6 a.m. and I was like, I told my family I was going to. I'm not going to let them think that I'm not someone who follows through my promises, that I'm a lazy bum. And I went ahead and I did it. Also, I had a friend that I told that I was doing this, and I would specifically send a picture of what it looked like at the end of my runs, which was this, I would run to the gym. So it was this college campus, and I would take a picture of the sunrise and I'd send it to him, and I would do that. And essentially I had backed it up with a little bit of accountability. I said, if I don't do this and you don't get this picture, actually I was posting it onto my close friend's story, I think, instead of sending it to him, but he was on there and he was checking it, and he said that I told him, I said, if you don't see me post this picture at some point today of me running, then you need to hit me up and I will send you money. I said, I will Venmo him $15. This is another way that you can use social almost embarrassment to increase the chance that you are going to do something. So that's a lot of steps all put together at once. We're going to go through one more example, and it worked, by the way. I ran until I got shin splints. I don't know what to do about that now, because if I keep running, I'm going to get a stress fracture, but it worked for at least the time that I was able to do it. And the other example we're going to go to was one from this YouTube video summary of Atomic Habits, which was a really cool video summary, and it was done by the YouTube channel 1% Better, and he tested this out. So we're going to go into his way that he tested it out in the next video. So that was episode 10 of System Design, and I hope you enjoyed it. This, of course, is the Modern Psychology Hacks channel, where we are teaching how to use modern psychology hacks to better your life and to increase the chance you're going to do good habits and make them automatic and effective. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video.